Okay, well, thank you for joining the webinar this afternoon, everyone. The topic today is Online Reputation Management Explained. And this is really a pretty interesting topic. There are a lot of things to cover. I've spent a fair amount of time over the last few weeks really updating my content and doing a lot of additional research. So I'm excited to share with you kind of what we've learned here. So as we go through the webinar today, what we'll do is give you a little bit of a brief background about myself and WEO Media. But really what we're going to do is dig into reputation management online. So first we'll talk about, kind of why does this matter? Why is it such an important thing? We'll show you some statistics and things along with that. Talk about some of the benefits of reputation and factors that drive those results. Then we'll really dig into the big four review sites, Google, Facebook, Yelp, and Healthgrades. Talk about each of those four individually and in some detail. And then I've got about 4 case studies at the end to kind of demonstrate some of the things we've talked about. Now, as far as Q&A, everyone should see on their webinar console, probably on the right of your screen, there's like a little console there. And so you can type in your questions. And what I'll do is when we get to the very end, I'll go through and answer any questions that may be in there, as well as some common questions that I normally get on this topic anyways. So that's kind of our agenda for today. Real briefly, my background. So I'm one of the co-founders and partner at WEO Media. We started the company 11 years ago. Dentistry Today named me one of their top CE leaders and consultants this year and last year. So I really appreciated that kind of unexpected honor. That was nice. And so WEO Media is based in Portland, Oregon. And we founded the company, as I mentioned, 11 years ago in 2009. We've got about 40 team members, and really what our team does is dental marketing. That's all we do. So we work with hundreds of practices around the country and really have a lot of experience on doing marketing of all aspects for dental practice. Also, for about the last 6 or 7 years, we've been a Google certified partner agency as well. And so that's been a nice thing to have in our cap. For the last 4 years, actually, the American Dental Association awards this Celerant Technology Award. And so we've been fortunate to win the category website and online marketing. So we've won that category 4 years in a row, which is really a great honor. We really appreciate that. And I think it really kind of speaks to the hard work that we really try to do for our clients. So last little slide here, giving a bit of background about WEO, and then we'll move on here. We provide over 24 different services, mostly digital marketing, and it's all for dentistry. And so the reason I mention this is what I'm going to teach today is based on experience. It's based on a lot of data and analysis that we've done specifically for dental practices. So what I'm going to share is not kind of theory or here's how I think it works. It's what we know to work based on just experience of the last 11 years in doing this. We've worked with over 1,000 practices at this point. So we have a lot of experience in dental marketing. We're going to try to share as much of that with you today as we can. Okay, enough about WEO. Let's talk marketing. So when we talk about digital marketing, I like to kind of set the stage with just a basic understanding. There really are 6 primary pillars of online marketing, and it's important to do all 6 of these things well and effectively if you really want to get maximum performance from an online marketing program. Today, we're going to talk about pillar number 4, online reputation and reviews. And this is a very important pillar. They're all important. This is certainly one of the most important pillars. And I think after you watch here for the next hour or so, maybe less, 45 minutes to an hour, you'll get a lot of information about why this is such a critical area. So why do online reviews matter? Let's start with that. So I'm going to go through 10 important statistics here that everybody should really know about. Number 1, 92% of consumers now read online reviews. That's not surprising, right? If you are going to purchase anything, whether it's a piece of electronics or a new appliance for your house, or you're looking for a chiropractor to adjust your back, or a dentist, right, or a marketing company, whatever you're looking for, there are online reviews about these types of things. And so almost everybody reads reviews now. This is just common standard practice. 88% of consumers trust online reviews just as much as personal recommendations. And that's kind of shocking that 9 out of 10 people trust what they read online just as much as like if their neighbor said, hey, I went to this doctor and he was great or she was great. But the reality is it's not that they would trust one review online as much as they would trust talking to the neighbor. But if they saw 147 reviews about this practice, well, they're going to tend to trust that. So that's kind of what that means. It's not a one-to-one, but when you see lots of reviews, people tend to trust that. 72% of consumers say that positive reviews make them trust a local business more. Again, that's not surprising. Number 4, healthcare providers overall are the second most searched category for reviews behind restaurants when people are looking for reviews online. That's not any specific review site in general. That's just overall. Those are the kind of the category numbers. Healthcare has the highest bar in terms of perceived importance for reviews. So what this means is, if let's say we're going to look for a new tablet, like an iPad or a Samsung or whatever, and we go online and we're reading reviews and we make a decision and we get the tablet. Oh, it's not really what I wanted. I can return that tablet and get a new one. It's not a big deal. So the importance of the reviews, yeah, it's helpful, but the decision itself is not that critical. Now, when we're picking a healthcare provider, that's orders of magnitude more important in terms of a decision. So that's what this means, is when people are making a decision, healthcare has kind of this highest bar in terms of, I need to be able to trust these reviews because this is a very important decision. And so people tend to really do their homework when it comes to healthcare. This is why it's the second most searched category, because it is such an important decision. 43% of consumers currently in need of a doctor plan to use online ratings and reviews to find one. Now, what this means is from one of the studies that I read, 4 out of 10 people, this 43%, the primary thing they're going to do is go online and look at reviews. So 4 out of 10 people say, instead of seeing who's in network or seeing who my neighbor recommends or my coworker recommends, I'm going to go online and do research. That's the primary thing they're going to do. And so that's pretty telling, that this is becoming more and more of just a standard way people look for consumers, make decisions like this. It's really important. Number 7, 89% of consumers do not feel a doctor rating is legitimate if it has fewer than 5 reviews. And this is kind of what I alluded to a minute ago. It's not that people are going to trust their neighbor less than they're going to trust one review that they lead online. But again, if I'm looking for a Thai food restaurant and I see, 400 reviews and it's 4.8 stars, I'm definitely going to trust that. And so that's what this means, is 9 out of 10 people essentially, if they see a decent quantity of reviews, then they will trust it. But if they don't see that, then they won't. The most important is the star rating factor. So the number one most important factor in terms of a consumer decision making when they're looking at reviews is the star average rating. So are you 4.8 stars, 4.2, 5.0, or is it 3.2, right? The star rating is the most important thing. 84% of consumers say that a review must be written recently to matter, right? To be relevant. So within the last 3 to 6 months, ideally. If somebody comes to your review site and sees the most recent reviews are from, a year and a half ago, they tend not to put as much, weight into those reviews. And then our 10th stat here, 32% of people have avoided a doctor based on reading negative reviews. So this is a challenge. Now, it's not that, you need to freak out if you get a negative review. If you have one negative review and many, many good reviews, that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. As long as your overall average is, 4.5 or whatever and above, that's great. Ideally, you want to be 4.0 and above at a minimum. And the target really is 4.5 star average and above. That's really where you'd like to be. So if you get a negative one here and there, it's not the end of the world as long as you have lots of positive ones. However, if you don't have a lot of reviews and you do get a negative one here and there, that can really have a bad impact. So we need to pay attention to that. So benefits. What are the benefits? Some of these things are obvious, but some of these things a lot of people don't really know about. So I'm going to give you 5 benefits for why you should really pay attention, why these things matter. So number 1, having good online reviews improves your website lead conversion rate. What does that mean? Well, every month you have a certain number of people coming to your website. And when they come to your website, they typically will look at, when people are researching online, they typically look at 3 to 5 pieces of information before they make a decision. So for example, they come to your website, well, they'll probably go look at your Facebook posting, maybe your Google reviews, maybe your Healthgrades profile, whatever. But they will typically do some research. And so the more you can have good reviews across those 4 major review sites, the more it's going to help increase your lead conversion rate, meaning more of the people coming to your website will convert and become potential patients, or hopefully actual patients. if you have good reviews. The opposite of that is also true. If you have a poor or lacking online review and reputation, when people come to your website and then do additional research, they will typically not be impressed or turned off even, and then they'll go to another doctor. So that's a huge factor is what does it do to your website lead conversion? Number two, it helps your SEO performance. So I'm not doing a webinar today on SEO. SEO stands for search engine optimization. And what really that means is it's a bunch of different things that a company would need to do on your website and your code and your content and all this kind of thing to get you to rank high in a Google search or a Yahoo and a Bing search. And so having a strong online reputation, lots of good reviews, recent, all those kinds of things, that's a strong SEO factor for Google to rank your website. And so you really get kind of two benefits for the price of one here. If you can drive really good online reviews, it's going to help your online reputation and it's going to help your Google rankings of your website. Number three, it makes negative reviews much less relevant, right? Like we just talked about. If you've got a few reviews and a bad one in there, the overall average is not good. It doesn't look good overall, right? But if you've got 100 good reviews and 1 or 2 bad ones, you're like a 4.8, 4.9 star average anyways. It doesn't matter. People kind of expect to see a few bad reviews here and there. It kind of makes it look legitimate. But if you have, a lot of bad reviews, obviously that's a problem. Number four, it improves the ranking of your profile within the review site. So what this means is people go on Healthgrades and they go on Yelp and they go on Google in particular to research healthcare providers. And so the providers within those review sites themselves that tend to have lots of good reviews, they tend to rank higher within those review sites themselves. So that's another benefit is you get kind of a preferential placement. And then the fifth thing here, overall, you're going to drive more traffic to your website from these review sites because people will do Google searches and they'll look on Google, they'll look on Facebook, they'll look on Yelp, they'll look on Healthgrades, and look on many other platforms as well to determine which doctor should I go see. And a lot of times, almost always as part of that process, they are going to go to your website. So you will get website traffic coming to you, people who initially maybe saw you on Yelp and then came to your website, or saw a Facebook post and then went to your website. So the more active and the better your online reputation is, the more it will drive traffic to your website. It all kind of works together. In fact, this is exactly how it works together. So this is something called the lead conversion funnel. And in marketing, we tend to think of things in terms of a funnel. And so at the top of the funnel, we're developing brand awareness. These would be your traditional direct-to-consumer type activities like direct mailers, radio ads, magazine ads, whatever. You're kind of blasting stuff out to the general public, and you're kind of developing awareness, but the conversion rate is pretty low at the top of the funnel. Typically 1 to 3% of the people who see your ad or your mailer will actually respond. So it's pretty low, and 3% actually is quite generous. It's normally not that good, usually closer to 1%. Now, as we head down the funnel, people are browsing. This is when people are really starting to do research. Typically, they're looking at your website and your social media, and website and social media convert at about 10 to 20%. So much better than direct marketing, with a big improvement. So this is what I'm saying. When people typically are looking to do research online, they're going to look at the website, the social media, and then the reviews. And then what's interesting is as we flow down the conversion funnel and get closer to making a decision here, the conversion rate on review sites is much, much higher than anything else. So they may start with the mailer or your website or your Facebook page, and that's kind of where they're gathering information. But most of the time on average, the final thing that's going to trigger that decision is a review site. And the big four, right? Google, Facebook, Yelp, and Healthgrades. So what this means is most of the time on average, people will look at the reviews, and that's the final thing that they think about. Now, not always though. Like sometimes people are going to come to Yelp and then go to your website, or start out on Google and then go to your website, or whatever. So people flow all kinds of different ways in terms of how they make a decision. But if you look at the averages, on average, people browse with website and social media and decide with reviews. So the 6 pillars, remember we talked about the 6 pillars a few minutes ago. This is why the 6 pillars are so important. You need that website, the SEO and PPC to drive traffic, the social media and the reviews and the videos. All these things work together. And this is why, because people typically look at 3 to 5 pieces of information, and all of these things work together. If you have good reviews but a lousy website and social media, people may not get past your website and social media to see your reviews, and vice versa. So all of it has to be robust and done well. So if we say, okay, Ian, you've convinced me I do need to pay attention to this. I want to have a good reputation. How do I get that? Well, here are kind of some factors that help you really think about what are the most important things and then how do we do that? So as I mentioned already, the most important factor is that average star rating, right? 4.0 is the minimum. 4.5 and above is really what you're shooting for. This is an interesting stat. Now, this comes from the restaurant industry, so it's not really specifically relevant for dentistry, but I think it kind of demonstrates a point. So this was a study done by a gentleman named Michael Luca at Harvard Business School. And he did a very detailed study. I've actually got the PDF if anybody wants it. It's about 50 pages. It's quite interesting. But what he found in his study, he did a very detailed analysis, and he found for independent restaurants, having a 1-star increase on Yelp leads to between a 5 and 9% increase in revenue. That is a huge amount of money for a restaurant or for any business, 5 to 9%. That's a big deal. And so what was also interesting about this too, and I didn't put the whole study on here, for chain restaurants, the increase was not as much. And the reasoning was, with a chain restaurant, you already know who Taco Bell and Burger King and McDonald's, you've already made up your mind about them. They've been around forever. Their branding is all over the place. You know who they are already. You don't need to go look up the reviews. Should I go to McDonald's? Well, I better check the reviews before I go to McDonald's. You know what McDonald's is. It's not really a big factor, right? But if you're thinking about that independent Thai restaurant for lunch, maybe I'll check Yelp and see what it shows. And so for independent restaurants, because there is not the current brand awareness, it had a big impact. Well, what does this mean for dentistry? Why am I showing you restaurants if we're talking about dentists, right? Well, most dentists are the same way. Almost all of you are independent practices. You don't have big national recognition unless you're like an Aspen or a PDS or some kind of big national chain with big national marketing. Nobody knows who you are unless it's a referral or something like that. You don't have kind of community brand awareness is what I'm trying to say. So for independent dentists and doctors, you're very much like independent restaurants in terms of you don't have national name recognition. And so therefore the reviews are likely to have a very similar impact on dental practices as they do restaurants because of that. So anyway, I think that's a fascinating study. I think it's something we should all pay attention to. And again, that star rating, super important. So that's number one. Number two, it's important to generate new reviews every month, right? So we talked about this. You want to have reviews that are kind of current and not more than 6 months old, ideally, as your most recent. Another question I commonly get is, I do a lot of lectures at dental conferences, and people will often ask me, they'll say, Ian, well, how many reviews, should I get? And what I'll tell people is, well, really more than your competitors. I mean, that's honestly the answer. So if you, can look a 1 to 2 mile radius around your practice and see how many Google reviews do they have? How many Healthgrades and Facebook reviews do they have? The answer to that question would be as many or more than them. That's the answer. It really varies by your competition. And last thing here, replying to reviews is actually pretty beneficial. So, people are going to post about your business on here, and it's really helpful if you can take the time to go in maybe, once a month, once a week, whatever, go in and just reply to the reviews. And we'll talk about this more a little bit later, but studies have shown from different review sites that if you take time to reply to the reviews, your average star rating actually goes up. Yelp actually put out a study that showed the average star rating went up about 10%. So for example, if you're at a 4.0 average, but you took time to go and reply to people, over time you'd have a 4.4. Because what they did is they looked at tens of thousands of businesses on Yelp, and they categorized them between businesses that replied to reviews and businesses that did not. And those that replied had a 10% higher star average rating, which is significant. So, and I've seen similar studies with other review platforms. So moral of the story is I would encourage you to reply to all reviews, whether they're good or negative. Just be careful about, you got to be mindful of HIPAA, right? We're in healthcare. So don't get into specific, clinical details, treatment details. I mean, technically with HIPAA, you're not even really supposed to acknowledge they're a patient. So I would be very vague and high level with your feedback, but at least reply. Okay, so now let's move into the big four sites themselves. What I'm going to do now is kind of show you a number of slides on each one of these, and we'll dig into a little more detail so you can understand kind of how they work, how do you take advantage of them, and what kind of flexibility do you have to work within them. So let's look at this. So let's say I go online and I do a Google search, and I pick up here Cooley Smiles. And these are some general dentists in Bellevue, Washington. And I happen to know these guys pretty well. They're long-term clients of ours. And so if we do a search for them, what do we see here? Well, up at the top of the search result, we see there's our Google reviews, right? Lots of good Google reviews. What else? There's Yelp, there's Facebook, and there's Healthgrades, right? Everything else on this page is their websites. What else? The only things we see here besides their websites are the big four, right? That's not coincidence. That's normally how it's going to be. So this is why these big four are so important. So let's talk about each one of them. Let's start with Google. Okay. Now, when we're talking about Google, Google is a search engine. It's also a reviews platform. It is kind of many things. But let's give you a little bit of context here. So Google in North America represents about 2/3 of all search volume. Bing is about 20%, Yahoo is about 10%, and there's just some really tiny ones other than that. So Google is by far the big gorilla, right? They dominate search. And so having reviews where all the traffic is obviously makes a lot of sense. As we mentioned, Google reviews are a very important factor for your rankings on Google. So if you have lots of good Google reviews and they're recent, then you tend to rank higher on Google searches. Now with Google, I'm going to show you here in a slide or two, there's 3 different areas for getting found on Google. What I'm going to talk about in terms of reviews is really the Google local map, the local block. That's really where we are going to focus in terms of reputation management for today's topic. Now, if you're interested in SEO, I've done several webinars, detailed webinars on SEO earlier this year. Those are all posted for free on our website at weomedia.com. So if you've not watched those and you're curious about SEO, you can do a real deep dive with me on those webinars if you want to go watch those anytime. What I'll just say for today is with the Google map, this is really important because we see when our clients get ranked in the local map, there's a huge increase in their traffic, their phone calls, and their new patient leads, and which normally means more new patients. So it's really important on Google to pay attention to this. So here's an example. So let's say I do a search for dentist in Sacramento, right, California. So here's kind of what that might look like. Now, what I mentioned, there's kind of these 3 sections on Google to get found. At the very top, outlined in blue, these are actually paid ads, right? These are called PPC, pay per click. It also goes by search engine marketing. There's many names for these ads, but essentially those are paid positions to show up there. That's not what we're talking about today. Again, if you want to watch one of my previous webinars, I go into a lot of detail on that. Below the paid ad positions is the Google local block or the local map section, right? That's what we're talking about today, and you can see there are reviews there. And then below that, there's an entire another section, typically with 10 organic listings. And so the local block and the organic listings, those are both determined by SEO, right? That search engine optimization. The top, that's PPC, that's a whole different category. So what we're going to focus on today is the middle, the local block. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about a little bit. That's where we really want to show up. So how do you get listed in that local block? Well, number one, it's essentially treated like a profile. So when you go to any profile listing on Google, it's going to say if it hasn't been claimed or optimized, you'll see like a little link and it says, claim this page. Are you the business owner? And there's like a little question mark or whatever. So it's really important to claim your business profile page. And then once you claim it, fill it out, put lots of photos of your business, put your office hours, put a link to your website. If you've got a video about your business, some profiles will let you upload videos. There's all kinds of information. And in fact, I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a minute, but it's very important to claim this. Now, if you are paying an agency like my company, for example, WEO Media, what we typically do as part of our SEO program is we will go ahead and claim that page. The business owner is the owner. We're simply an administrator, but we'll claim the page. We'll optimize it on behalf of the business owner. So it's very important to claim and optimize your profile. Super, super important. One of the most important takeaways from today, if you've not done that, please immediately do this. It will help you quite a bit online. Number 2, how do you get ranked in this Google local block, right? Well, a lot of it has to do with your website itself. So there's a lot of things on the website we do to get it to rank well, and that Google wants to see that it's properly optimized. So there's a lot of things in the code that we do to get the website ranking well. And again, that's the SEO webinar, not today. Another important factor are directories. So there are over 100 different directories that are out there that have information about businesses. And what Google does is it looks at any piece of information it can find out about your dental practice, and it's trying to aggregate all that information to get to learn as much as it can about your business. And so if it goes on these directories and it sees, okay, on some of these directories, you're listed as suite A, and others you're listed with no suite number at all. or in some places you're a DMD, in other places you're a DDS, or there's any sort of inconsistencies like that, Google says, something is wrong. I don't know which information is correct and which information is wrong, but I know something's wrong. Therefore, I don't have a lot of confidence in these results, and therefore you're not going to show up in the local block and you're not going to show up on a page one of a search, typically. So it's very important to claim your profile on Google, but also have your SEO company make sure that they go through and do a wholesale cleaning and claiming of all the directories. So part of what we do for our program is, again, we're looking at over 100 directories that we go out and we claim and we fill them out with consistent, proper information to make sure that it's all taken care of. And then when Google sees that, they reward that with good rankings. And there's many, many other things that would help. But if I can give you some kind of main topics, claim your page, work with your SEO company, and get those directories cleaned up. Those are some of the best things you can do to get found in that map and really get your rankings up. Now, what does this listing look like? Let's go back to our Cooley Smiles here. So we showed you, the Yelp and the Healthgrades and the Facebook on the left and Google's on the right. So what I'm really talking about is this. So what I've outlined here in red, this is essentially your Google listing, right? And this shows up typically when people do a search for your practice. And so I'm going to blow this up and expand it so you can see it in more detail. So this is what we're really looking at that was outlined in red. So on the left is just the top half and the right is kind of the bottom half, just to make it big enough to see. So on the left, what we see is we've got our reviews, 4.9 star average, 440 reviews. That's phenomenal, right? There's a link to their website. There's a link for directions. You can see that right there, and there's our little logo, and you can see there's photos because we've uploaded photos. Then it's got the address, it's got the office hours, and if you click on that little drop down by hours, it'll show you all 7 days, what the hours are. You can see their phone number, their website, and stuff like that. And there's questions below. If you continue further down, you'll see, well, what other reviews are about these guys on the web? Well, you'll see Facebook, you'll see Healthgrades, they even have Angie's List on here. And then below that, popular times. And so say, okay, when's a good time to come in to Cooley Smiles and get an appointment? And you can click on, so this is for Monday, but you can click on any day of the week there and Google will show you kind of what the typical traffic is. How does Google know what traffic is going to any kind of brand of business? Well, Google, there's a lot of people who have Gmail or who have Androids, and so they can kind of track, if people have opted in for that, Google can track where these people are going and where they have traffic. And it's similar to like Google Maps and Waze and these types of things where people voluntarily opt in. So there's enough people that go to see Cooley Smiles that they can determine kind of what the traffic patterns are. That's how they figure that out, in case you're curious. And then if you scroll below that, there's reviews and other stuff like that. So this is essentially like another website for your business. So you got to claim this. You got to make sure the information's correct, add the photos and all that. Very important. So quick summary here for Google. It is definitely the dominant search engine, right? 2/3 of the search traffic. So that's why it's very important. We have the 3 areas we want to get found: the pay-per-click up at the top, the paid ads, the local block in the middle with the reviews, and the organic listings down below. But for online reputation, we're really focusing on that local block. And like I mentioned, it really functions as a secondary website. It's that important. So getting the local block rankings is really based largely on a solid SEO program. And so again, if you have an SEO agency you're using, talk to them and say, if you're not in that local block, ask them, what can I do to get there? Sometimes we'll have clients ask us, hey, what can we do? And we'll say, well, if you can get us more photos, if you could get us a video, and those are things you can do to help your agency. The agency has a lot of things that they'll do on their side, but it should be a collaborative effort to get your ranking there. So that's Google in a nutshell. I'm going to briefly talk about Facebook. Facebook really is not a reviews platform, right? It's a social media platform, but people have, their business pages, right? Their Facebook business pages. And so sticking with Cooley Smiles here, here's their Facebook page. And what you'll see is you've kind of got this navigation, and right there circled in red, that's the reviews. Now, Google actually has recommendations and reviews. A couple of years ago, they kind of augmented it. It used to be just reviews. Then they added recommendations. And I'll talk about this in a little detail on the next slide. But essentially, this is kind of what their business Facebook page looks like. And then you can also see kind of down below here, 5 out of 5, based on the opinion of 16 people, right? So on the right, you'll see some of the recommendations and comments and so forth. So anyway, this is just basically what a business page looks like. One comment I would make, it's very, very important to use a business page for your business. Do not use your personal Facebook page for your dental practice for a number of reasons. But most importantly, the business pages on Facebook have far more functionality than a personal page. Personal pages are not designed for business. They don't have reviews and photos and all these other things that you're really, really going to want. The business pages also have lots of cool widgets and plugins and things you can do. So most people don't do this so much anymore, but every once in a while I still come across practices where the doctors are using their personal Facebook page and they're really just missing out. I mean, this is all free, right? It's free to get a Facebook business page. So I'd encourage you to, either take the time to do it yourself, or again, hire an agency like us, we'll do it for you. But there's so many cool functionality and things you can do on Facebook these days. So it's worth taking a look at. I want to dig a little deeper though on these reviews and recommendations. So again, in 2018, Google kind of split this out and came out with recommendations and made some distinctions here. Now, one of the things is reviews have comments and star ratings. The star rating is what makes it a review in terms of Facebook's definition. With recommendations, you can do a recommendation and they only have comments, and there's differences on those. Now, in your Facebook business page, you have toggle controls to where you can set up where you can have these reviews and recommendations available where people can make these comments about your business, or you can turn it off entirely and not even give people the option to comment on your business. So you kind of have a lot of flexibility there from Facebook. Anyone can comment on or like a review, okay? But only people within your network can comment on a recommendation, comment or like a recommendation. So again, there's kind of a distinction there. And then the last little thing I'll say is, I'll kind of read this to you. Reviews only show up on a business's page, so on a Facebook business page. So reviews are only going to show up on your Facebook business page, okay? But recommendations, those can appear on user profiles all across Facebook. So those are discoverable all across Facebook. So when people search or talk about your business, it makes it much easier for them to find you. So it's really good to have both reviews and recommendations. And in fact, most people just organically will have both. But I just wanted to try to kind of explain that distinction. This is unique to Facebook. None of the other review sites kind of have these reviews, recommendation distinctions and kind of have done it. Facebook's done it a bit differently. And again, Facebook is a social media platform. It's not a reviews platform. So I think that's why they've kind of added this recommendations piece, because recommendations feels more like social media. Reviews is more like Google and Yelp and Healthgrades and so forth. So that's just something to understand there. So quick little takeaways about Facebook. Again, we all know it's by far the dominant social media platform, specifically in dentistry. Instagram is probably a good second place, but for now, Facebook is still number one. Facebook reviews can be embedded in your, and again, if you have a nice little, if you're using a business page for Facebook, then one of the advantages is there's a little widget that you can embed into your website, and your website can actually show your Facebook feed and your Facebook reviews and stuff like that. So it's very helpful to drive reviews and recommendations on Facebook, but if I had to prioritize, Google is the most important. Okay. Next, let's talk about Healthgrades. People, typically know about Facebook and they know about Google, and maybe not everything I'm explaining, but they kind of conceptually understand it, even Yelp. But I find Healthgrades is probably the most misunderstood or least understood of these four of the big four. And it's a pity, because Healthgrades is actually a great platform. And I'll show you some details here. So first, a little background stat. So according to there was this study that was done in June of this year from ComScore. And what they found was, in terms of connecting consumers with healthcare, Healthgrades is actually the #1 marketplace online for doing that. A lot of people don't know that. It's significantly larger than Vitals.com and ZocDoc.com. If you look at kind of their stats overall, one of the things here that I've shown on this page, half of Americans who will see a doctor this year use Healthgrades. So one thing I want to say right out of the gate about Healthgrades, it's very different from any other review site. So other review sites, let's just talk about Google and Yelp in particular. You write a review, you type it out, you select your star rating, and you post it, and that's it. Facebook is kind of like that for reviews, plus it has recommendations, but they're all based on typing something and entering a star rating. That's how most everything works. That's not how Healthgrades operates. Healthgrades is quite different. Healthgrades, if you want to write a review for somebody, it's going to ask you a series of questions. It's like a survey. What was your experience, with the front desk, and what was it like with the doctor, and did you find their policies confusing? And there's all these kind of questions that it'll ask, and it's really trying to get a deep dive into what your experience was like with this practice, with this doctor, this healthcare provider. And so, as a consumer, as a potential patient, you're going to get way more information going to Healthgrades and researching a practice or a doctor than you are anywhere else, typically. because the people who write reviews on Healthgrades, it's just so much more granular and detailed. So that's one thing I want to explain about Healthgrades is it doesn't get as much traffic, nearly as much traffic, in fact, as the other platforms. And this is why it's not as well known. But the detail is so much more rich. It's so much more useful when you're trying to make a decision. So for me, I always look at Healthgrades. If I'm looking for a doctor, yeah, I'm going to look at Google and Facebook and all that other stuff too. But I'm really going to look at Healthgrades. That's where you're going to get the most detail. Okay, so some other background information here with this. So if you compare Healthgrades with like US News and World Report, WebMD, Vitals, ShareCare, ZocDoc, these are like a lot of the leading places where people do research on doctors. Healthgrades actually dominates in terms of the rankings online. So if you search for, this data is based on over 21,000 sample keywords. So what they did is they did a bunch of Google searches, and what they found was Healthgrades, 36% of the time was listed number one, and 90% of the time was in the top 3 search results when people are searching for these healthcare related. So 21,000 healthcare related keywords, 90% of the time, Healthgrades shows up in the top 3. So what this means is it's well worth your time to make sure you've got a nice, solid, detailed, filled out profile on Healthgrades, because Healthgrades itself ranks pretty high almost all the time for many searches. So with Healthgrades, they have a standard profile, which is free. And so any doctor will automatically kind of get these standard profiles created. So as Healthgrades finds you and says, oh, here's a optometrist or an endodontist or a chiropractor or a general dentist, whatever, right? They find doctors, they build profiles for them. So everybody kind of gets this standard profile for free. Now, if you don't have one online, it's probably because Healthgrades doesn't know you're in practice at this point, so you might want to contact them. But most people already have this. Now, with the standard profile, one of the things that you'll see is there will be advertisements. So I've got the 2 red arrows pointing to this VRBO ad. So these are banner ads. So because it's a free profile, this is how Healthgrades monetizes and makes money, which is fine. That's what a lot of places do. This is a standard practice on the internet. What you'll see also below that are some other doctors. So what it says is compare this doctor with other doctors nearby. So it's showing competitors on a standard profile. Now, these are obviously, if you were paying for a profile, you wouldn't want any of this stuff. And in fact, that's exactly how it works. So they call it a partner profile or a premium profile, enhanced profile. It goes by, I think, different names, but I just will call it a partner profile or whatever. But this is a paid profile. And so we'll see right out of the gate, the ads are gone, right? There are no advertisements. There's no banner ads. We also see there's no competitors listed. So those are some big advantages. And then also we've got this much, much better call to action, book now for telehealth. So Healthgrades actually offers this telehealth platform, or you can just kind of do the standard, book an appointment, email us, that kind of a thing. So it's a much more kind of, what I would say is a much more, I guess, a better experience for the user, because you don't have all this clutter and all these other things. And it's obviously better for the provider because it's really focused entirely about them. There's no ads, there's no competitors, and there's better calls to action. So the partner profile is definitely quite nice. Now, here's an example of if you do a search for, best dentist in Chandler, Arizona, right? This is in kind of by Phoenix. So what we see here is the #1 organic. So we've got the local map. Now, Healthgrades can't show up in that local map because it's not a dental practice, right? It's a review platform. But what's the very first thing we see showing up? Healthgrades, right? This is what I said, 90% of the time they're in the top 3, 36% of the time they're #1. Well, here's one of those 36%. So now if we click on this, if we say, oh, okay, wow, what's this Healthgrades thing? Like somebody clicks on that, then you'll see something like this. You'll see, oh, dentist near Chandler, Arizona. The people at the top here outlined in red, those are those featured providers. These are the people who are paying for that premium partner profile. The partner profiles rank at the very top. So when somebody sees that Healthgrades high in a Google search, they click on Healthgrades and go to Healthgrades, the first doctors they're going to see when they get to Healthgrades are the people with those premium profiles, right? Another way to demonstrate it is like this. So it'll show up in different areas. So anyway, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty slick program that they developed. So quick little summary on Healthgrades. They have great Google rankings, right? So for people searching for best dentist, best podiatrist, best whatever, those types of searches, they typically rank very well for those. Everyone's going to get a standard profile. but the premium profiles, those partner profiles, have a lot of advantages. How Healthgrades has chosen to go to market with these premium profiles is they typically only sell these through agencies. So it's not like with Yelp or Facebook or Google, you can kind of do your own thing or contact them directly or whatever. With Healthgrades, the only way to get a premium profile is to go through an agency who's partnered with Healthgrades, like WEO. So we're a Healthgrades partner agency and a Google partner agency. So somebody like that can help you, and we're happy to help people with that. Okay, let's talk about Yelp. Now, Yelp is an interesting one because Yelp will oftentimes be fairly polarizing. When I give lectures and talk about Yelp, some people like Yelp, some people really hate Yelp. And so it's always kind of an interesting conversation with Yelp. But let's go ahead and dig into it. So when we go on Yelp, let's say I go on Yelp and I do a search for general dentistry in Portland, Oregon. At the very top, I'm going to see sponsored results. These are people who are paying ads, just like on Google, similar to Healthgrades. These are people who are paying money to kind of show up in these positions, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just advertising, right? Nothing wrong with that. So at the very top, and then as you scroll down below the sponsored results, then you'll get to a section that says all results. And so these would be, the people who have profiles but are not paying to show up in the ad spots. Okay, so that's kind of how it's formatted. Now, the difference between the free profiles and the paid profiles, I'm going to kind of break this down. So similar to some of this stuff is kind of similar to how Healthgrades does it as well. So in the free profiles, Yelp's profile will typically show competitors, whereas the paid profiles do not. Similar to Healthgrades, if you have a paid profile, you'll be listed at the top of the search results, like we just saw, and the free profiles will be listed below those. On a paid profile on Yelp, you can upload as many photos as you want. On a free profile, you're limited on how many photos you can show. Also, with a paid profile, you can arrange the photos in whatever order. The free profile, you don't have a lot of control. There's a funny story. I had a client in Texas, a general dentist practice in Texas, and we were, doing their marketing, online marketing, and I was looking at their online reputation, which is always something we want to take a look at. And their Yelp page, they only had a few photos on their Yelp page, and the cover photo for their dental practice, mind you, was a dead fish. So I think these guys must have been fishermen, or maybe one of their patients posted this. I don't know what the story behind this dead fish was, but if you come to their Yelp page, the first thing you see is a big dead fish. And because they had a free profile, there was literally nothing they could do about that. And they're like, Ian, what can I do? And it's like, honestly, you need to get a paid profile and delete that fish picture and take control of your profile. And they're not terribly expensive. I think Yelp charges like $100 a month or something like that. But you can ask them what that is. But anyways, you have control if you do a paid profile. And then there's a few other things as well. You have better calls to action. You actually have a dashboard where you can see your traffic and stuff like that. And they will give you a dedicated account manager to help you with that. So the paid profiles, if you want to, if you think Yelp is important to your practice, I would recommend probably doing a paid profile and trying it out and seeing. They're going to typically want to, lock you into some sort of term, see if you can get that term reduced, at least initially for a trial period, see what you think. But anyway, that's kind of the differences between free and paid profiles on Yelp. Now, I'm going to give you some other data from Yelp that's pretty interesting. So 97% of people end up making a purchase after visiting Yelp. Now, that doesn't mean they make a purchase with you, because if they go to Yelp, they may look at 2 or 3 or 4 different dentists, but one of those dentists is getting the business. So 97% of people in general. Now, what's the timeline for that? 51% of those people make that purchase the same day. So that I'm on Yelp, I'm looking to schedule an appointment, book a meeting, whatever, and 90% within a week. So, remember the lead conversion funnel we talked about, right? When you get into the reviews, I said 40 to 70% will typically make decisions here. And here's Yelp specific data. You can see it's actually even more than that. Now, one of the most controversial things about Yelp is people say, oh, Yelp, they're always, they're hiding my good reviews. All my 5-star reviews have been filtered. And that people get really frustrated about that. And I get it, man. I'm not defending Yelp here. I feel your pain. It is frustrating, and that's just how Yelp works. It is what it is. But Yelp is so big, we just have to say, okay, well, it is what it is. We just need to try to work with Yelp and get as good a review profile as we can and play by their rules. That's just really the best advice I can give you. Now, this is data from Yelp. So what they're showing is 70% of their reviews that people post are shown just as is. 22% get filtered, meaning these are not recommended reviews. So if you've ever been on a Yelp page and you scroll down, you'll see that there are some, it's like there's like a little button that says filtered. And you can click on that and then see these kind of not recommended reviews. And so 22% of the reviews kind of get filtered where people can still see them, but they have to click on an additional button to go see them. And then 8% are just flat out removed and deleted off the platform because they just, whatever, Yelp thinks it's fraud or spam or whatever. So, but what that means is 30% of the reviews posted on Yelp disappear. This is what frustrates people. 30% is much, much higher than other review platforms. So Yelp is by far the most aggressive at removing and regulating this stuff. This is interesting too. So this is the actual distribution of star ratings. And I think this is where people kind of get frustrated a little bit. So 51% of the reviews on Yelp, of all of Yelp, this is not dental specific, this is everything on Yelp. Half of them are 5 stars, 18% are 4 stars, but 17% are 1 stars. And that's what really gets people fired up. It's like, oh, they're filtering my good reviews and showing the bad reviews. And you know, it's frustrating, but this is at least gives you kind of a feel for what this typically looks like on average. Now, this is Yelp data. This is not the general internet. Because remember, I mentioned earlier, healthcare typically is the second most searched overall on profiles, but on Yelp specifically, because Yelp has so many categories, healthcare is actually 6th on the list here. So it gets a lot of traffic. It's still relevant. In general, because Yelp is based in Northern California in Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, the West Coast tends to use Yelp more than the East Coast. It tends to, the usage kind of dies down as you move east, but there are many benefits. So my East Coasters, I tell my East Coast doctors, hey, look, you don't underestimate Yelp, and I'll show you why here. This is why. So Yahoo is the 3rd biggest search engine. About 10% of all traffic in the United States and Canada is on Yahoo. And so where Google has Google reviews and Yelp has Yelp reviews, Yahoo doesn't have Yahoo reviews, Yahoo has Yelp reviews. So if you focus on Yelp and you're on the East Coast, 10% of the traffic on the East Coast is going to be looking at Yelp reviews on Yahoo. So you may be an East Coast doctor listening to me right now thinking, nobody uses Yelp out here for looking at doctors. Well, they probably don't do it as much as the West Coast. I will grant you that. However, 10% of all people searching online on Yahoo are seeing Yelp reviews on Yahoo. So people don't understand this. And I tell people on the East Coast all the time, like, look, you should be focusing on Yelp reviews because nobody else is on the East Coast. And so even in the Midwest, quite frankly, I mean, the West Coast, we're pretty dialed in on Yelp out here. But on the further east you go, people are less dialed in. And so this is a big advantage. So if you're an East Coast doctor listening to me right now, hey, here's a secret advantage you can get. Focus on Yelp. It'll help you with Yelp. It'll help you with your Google rankings on SEO for your website, and it'll help you on Yahoo. Really nice side benefit. So something to note. So let's summarize Yelp. Yelp has the free and paid profiles, just like Healthgrades. Yelp offers paid ads, just like Google. Actually, Facebook has paid ads as well. I didn't talk about that today, but that's a separate webinar. And yes, Yelp can be frustrating. They do filter 30% of all the reviews. That's much higher than everybody else. That's kind of frustrating. But it is a major platform. It's on Yahoo and other platforms. And so I would encourage people, even if you hate Yelp, I would still say play the game, try to get reviews on their platform. Okay, we're getting close to the end. I'm going to show some case studies, and then I'm going to wrap it up with a bunch of tips for best practices and how to do all this stuff. So let's go through these 4 case studies quickly. This first is a general dentist in Oregon, which you can see their Google Healthgrades and Facebook reviews basically non-existent. Then they were using our review software called WEO Reviews. And in about 7 months, you can see they went from 3 reviews to 94 reviews. So very, very helpful. What this does for them, of course, is all the benefits we talked about earlier, the SEO rankings, and so forth. Case study number 2, this is a general dentist in California. So before they started using our software, 27 reviews on those 3. After 16 months, 126. So a nice increase. They weren't as active using the software as other people have been, but still pretty good. Now here's an endodontic group. This is 2 locations in Wisconsin. And again, between their 2 locations, they only had 23 Google reviews. And after a year and a half, 709 Google reviews, right? So when clients really engage and use our software, it is huge game changer for them online. So the Google rankings go way up, the reputation goes up, the conversion goes up. Very, very helpful. This last case study is by far the most detailed. This is an oral surgeon in Arizona. So notice I've showed 2 case studies with general dentists, 2 case studies with specialists. That's on purpose. Sometimes specialists tend to think, well, I'm a specialist. I don't need to worry about this marketing stuff. I'm referral driven. Well, yes, you're referral driven, but here's the thing about the referral process. When a general dentist says, hey, you should go see this surgeon or this endodontist or this periodontist, what happens is the patient goes home, they get on Google and they start doing search. They do research and they're going to look at your website, look at your reviews, just like everybody else. And so while you may be thinking I'm a specialist, I'm referral driven, a huge part of the referral process flows through online reviews. And so the wise specialist listening to me right now will get on it. If they're not currently paying attention to the reviews, you should get on it immediately and it'll make a big difference for you long term. Here's an oral surgeon, right? This guy's been working with us for 5 years. When he started, 1 Google review, 9 Facebook reviews, nothing on Healthgrades. After a year, 78 Google reviews, right? 35. So we went from 10 reviews to 139. But check this out. 5 years into it, 1,154 reviews. He is killing it on these platforms, in particular Google. Now, he's in the Phoenix area, which is very populated, very competitive. We have him ranking very high on Google for all the major search terms in his area, and largely because of his website and the strength, the huge strength of his Google reviews. So if you use the software and you're consistent with it, it can be game-changing, absolutely game-changing for you. So I'm going to show you some additional data from this particular surgeon. This is a direct quote he gave me earlier this year. He said, Ian, I am getting 1 to 2 new patients per day who come to my office, and they have referral slips for other oral surgeons, but they come to me because of my website and online reviews. So here's a surgeon who says, yes, I'm referral driven. The guy's getting 1 to 2 patients a day who were referred to other surgeons who come in with referral slips from other surgeons to other surgeons. And he's coming in and he's getting this many patients coming to him from his online reputation and his website. So this is a huge thing. I mean, when we see these results with some of our specialist clients, it's just, it boggles my mind sometimes when I'll talk with specialists like, oh, this stuff doesn't really apply to me. I'm like, oh boy, it really, really does. You know, you may not realize it, but it really, really does. And so this is a really good example of that. So what are the results for this one? Case study number 4 here with our surgeon. So he's generating over the last 5 years, averaging 229 reviews per year, which is about 19 reviews per month. That's a lot for a one doctor, one location practice. He's ranking great on Google, page 1 for all the search terms, actually top of page 1 for many of those. He's generating dozens of new patients per month from our digital marketing efforts. His ROI is incredible. Last time we checked, it was well over 10x. So he's doing very, very well. So when you do this stuff properly, the results can be outstanding. So last section, I'm going to wrap this up with some tips and recommendations on here's how you can implement some of this stuff in your practice. So number 1, let's build our online reputation. We want to focus on those big 4 review sites we've talked about. Consider using the software, right? There's WEO Reviews. There's other people that have review software. Use one of them. You know, it doesn't really matter. They all work similar. If you want to, you know, most of our clients use us because it's just easier to use one company for everything. But bottom line, I would highly recommend, if you don't use us at all, find out who you can use if you don't want to use us, but use somebody, you know, use your software to drive results. The one caution I would say is don't use the software to drive results, to drive reviews to Yelp. Yelp is very, very stingy about this. If Yelp determines, and don't ask me how they do this, but if they determine that they think you're using software to drive reviews to their review site, they will not only remove and filter all of those, but in some cases, they'll actually put a big red banner across your Yelp business page that says this business is in non-compliance with our terms and conditions and stuff like that. It's a pretty nasty looking thing. And so when Yelp implemented this a couple of years ago, we removed Yelp from our software platform. We don't even allow our clients to use our software for Yelp because it'll get them in trouble. So if you are currently using software, to drive reviews to Yelp, my recommendation would be stop immediately before they find out and punish you for it. Okay. Next thing is asking everyone for feedback. So this is an important thing. Now we're going to talk about manually versus automatically sending reviews. So if you're using software, it can automatically send them versus if you manually do it yourself. So one thing I want to point out is I read a study that was over 10,000 different reviews. And what the study showed was there was almost 0 difference in the average star rating. Now, between manually and automatically sending. The reason that people, a lot of times I'll talk to doctors or office managers or marketing coordinators, and they'll say, well, we want to pick and choose who we ask to write a review for us. And their logic is because, we want to pick people that we think are likely to write a good review. And I understand that logic. It makes sense. But I'm telling you, based on my experience and based on studies I've read and also what I've seen with our own clients, you're much, much better off doing the automatic sending. Sync it with the software, let the software do its thing. You will generate way more reviews, and there's going to be no difference in star rating. The difference you're going to have is you'll have a lot more reviews. So I highly encourage people to do that. But again, don't automatically do it with Yelp. Negative feedback, right? It's almost impossible to avoid negative feedback. Patients kind of expect that they're going to see some negative reviews on there, but what's really important is kind of how you deal with those reviews. So don't worry about those. Now, specifically, if you're going to manually send reviews, here's some tips on how to do that, and then I'll follow this up with, if you're going to automatically send reviews, some specific advice for that. But let's just first start with the manual. So we want to find a comfortable approach. When we're going to talk to a patient, what do we want to say to them? So you could say something like, hi, hey, we would love to get your feedback. Would you mind leaving us a review online? If they say yes, then you send them a text or whatever you're going to do. Or you could say, we always welcome feedback. Would it be okay if we sent you a text or email to get your feedback? Something like that. Just kind of prep them, prime them. And then, like I mentioned before, when you are asking for these reviews, it's very important that you do not incentivize patients. This is definitely against the rules. You don't want to say, hey, if you write us a review, we'll give you a $5 Starbucks card. Do not do that. If you get turned into the dental board, you'll get in trouble for that, or the ADA. Not good. Now, if you're going to automatically send these reviews, then I say PMS integration, your practice management software integration. So if you're going to integrate with the software, which is what we recommend, here's kind of what you could say, something like that. So let the patients know that they're going to be receiving a request, and then give them a brief explanation. So you could say something like, we always welcome feedback from our patients. After your appointment, you'll receive a text or email from our office. We'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts. Or say something like this, similar. We'd like to know how we did today. After your appointment, you'll receive a text or email from our office. We'd really appreciate hearing your feedback. Right? Something like that. So you're just kind of prepping them and priming them, you're letting them know. And we find when practices do this, give them a heads up, the conversion rate goes up significantly, versus if they never say anything, they don't convert as many of those invitations. Another thing that's very important, if you're going to really focus on your online reputation, you want to define the roles and responsibilities within your practice and establish a process. So thinking about, how do we integrate this into our daily workflow? And when you assign responsibilities, it will help that even become more clear. So make sure everyone on the team knows their role in the process. So for example, the askers, who are the people that are going to ask patients if they would like to leave a review? Going to plan that out. Don't just leave this to chance or whoever happens to think about it. Strategically think about this and plan this. Who on our team is going to ask, and plan that out. This could be part of your daily huddle, or it could just be like, this is just standard workflow. It's just always how it is. But define who's going to ask. Also, who's going to send. Now, if you're automatically sending through the software, you don't need to worry about this. But if you're manually doing it, define who's going to manually do this. Who's going to manually send these reviews. Maybe it's the same person as the asker. Could be. Maybe it's different people. And then last, the responder. This is a person who's going to follow all the reviews, and track and see, okay, what are the new reviews that are getting posted every week? And then ideally that person would kind of write a reply to those reviews, right? And just also kind of the responder is also kind of a person who can kind of report back to the group and say, hey, we got this many reviews this week, right? So if you can establish a process and define these roles and responsibilities, it will really go a long ways towards those good results. That oral surgeon case study I showed you, this is what they did. They defined the process, they defined who's doing what, they're very diligent, and they've done an amazing job on getting these results. One thing we like to recommend too is, kind of setting goals and celebrating. So consider setting a goal for every month. How many reviews are we going to try to drive every month? And 10, 15, 20, per location is something in that range is probably good. But see what you can do. Define the roles, take that full team approach like we just talked about, and then celebrate when the goal is met, right? If you're the doctor, you're the owner, say, hey, team, if we get 20 reviews this month overall, I'm taking you all out to dinner. Again, when COVID's gone anyways, right? So when we can actually go out to dinner. People listening to this webinar a year from now is going to bring up bad memories. Gift certificates, maybe you give them gift certificates. Maybe it's like, hey, if we can get enough reviews this month or this quarter, we're going to do a fun CE trip somewhere, or you give increased CE budget for your staff, or whatever, right? Just kind of think of fun, cool stuff to celebrate those wins, because the bottom line is if you can drive 10 to 20 new reviews a month, there is a tangible, significant business improvement to your practice if you can do that. So it's well worth incentivizing and rewarding your team to get that done. Question I always get when I teach this stuff in person, Ian, what do I do with negative reviews? How do I deal with those? How do I handle them? So I'm going to give you kind of some of our best practices for dealing with negative reviews. So first, I would say, if you get a negative review online, reply once and do not engage in a back and forth. So you reply once and you're done. If they come back and say more stuff, don't engage them. If you get into a back and forth commentary battle with them online, it's never going to look good for the practice. So just reply once. And when you do that, stay positive and professional, right? Take the high road, kill them with kindness. Do not discuss specifics, especially in terms of treatment details. Remember, be mindful of HIPAA. You might want to check, every state is a little bit different in kind of how the stuff is administered, but HIPAA in general, I think is consistent across the country. So check with somebody who, like an attorney or somebody maybe from your dental association, and ask, what can I or can't I say? But in general, I would just say keep it very generic and vague and high level, but reply it and be positive and professional. Hey, we appreciate your feedback. We'd love to talk to you offline, something like that. And lastly here, if it's inappropriate, if it's just flat out wrong, if you think it's a disgruntled ex-employee or a competitor that doesn't like you or whoever, but you think, hey, this is not a patient of record, okay, then you've got some options. Number one, you can flag that review as inappropriate on the review site. Every review site has a mechanism and a process where you can flag the review as inappropriate. And then they all have their internal mechanisms for how they work through that process. And the review site will determine whether they remove the review or not. But at least there is like an appeals process, essentially, where you can flag and say, hey, this is not a patient of record, or this is not true, or whatever. You can do that. You can also contact the reviewer if you know who they are. You can just contact them offline, just send them a text, give them a call or whatever, and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this. We want to make sure you're happy or whatever. But take it offline. That's always a good idea. And then the last resort is you could consider legal action. If they're just like, there's some serious defamatory stuff going on and they're not a patient of record, or they're saying things that are just not true or whatever, in some cases you can get an attorney involved. I generally don't recommend that. It's kind of a last resort. But if it's really doing material damage to your business, hey, you got to stick up for yourself, right? So don't be afraid to go legal if you need to, but I would just say exhaust your other avenues first before you go that route. Last but not least here, and we'll wrap it up, the techniques for generating reviews matter. So text messaging is by far the most effective, like I mentioned earlier, typically between a 15 and 35% conversion rate when text messages are sent, versus emails, 1 to 3%, and then paper handouts, typically not very good. So we always recommend that. We always want to recommend do the software integration. You're going to get the higher conversion rate. You're going to get way more sends. And of course, our recommendation is our software, but of course, there are others that do the same thing or similar things. So that's it. What I'd like to do now in summary is, when we cover these 6 pillars or anything in particular, I always like to end my webinars with an offer for folks. If you would like us to speak with one of our consultants about your online reviews and reputation, or SEO, or any of these other 6 pillars, send us an email, consult@weomedia.com. And what you'll do is you'll be able to talk with one of our senior marketing consultants. They will talk with you. And if you want, they'll give you a free copy of my book. So this is a book that I wrote last year. It's called Mastering Practice Growth. It's a very detailed how-to guide on practice growth. It's digital marketing. It's all kinds of different stuff that's in there in a lot of detail. So if you would like a copy of this book, just give one of our consultants, send us an email. They'll talk with you. They'll send you a free copy. We're not trying to sell books. We just want to educate people. Here's how this stuff works. And then hopefully, if you like what our philosophy and our approach, if you like to work with us, that's great. We're not high pressure salespeople. We just want to educate. That's our goal. So last but not least here, I've got my contact information. What I'll do, since we're over on time, is all the questions and answers. If I could ask people, if you have questions, send me an email or text me. I'll be happy to talk to you or email you back and answer all of your questions on online reputation, as well as any other digital marketing topic, dental marketing topic. I'm happy to cover those answers. So I want to really appreciate everybody sticking with me today. I know it's a little bit longer than normal, but a lot of content to cover today. So hopefully everybody got some good information. and really enjoyed the webinar. And I look forward to seeing you on future webinars next year. Have a happy new year and good holiday season, guys. Thanks.